Hi guys, thanks for joining us today on our live. Darlene and Lindsay here from OPI Education. Today we're going to show you guys how to focus on powder perfection. Little tips and tricks here and there, like for example, how to extend the nail, how to do a French straight across, a chevron, and also how to do a reverse pink. So let's get started. So here's my model. I've already pre-prepped her prior to this so that we can save some time. First, I'm going to start out by actually doing our extension using our clear color set powder. Here's my pre-prepped nail, and here is my nail tip that I've already sized out to make sure that it fits from wall to wall. So you can see that it fits perfectly. Now, before I begin, I'm actually going to take my base coat, step 1, and I'm going to use my base coat and actually double it as my resin so that I can apply my nail tip securely. Now, when applying your nail tip, we want to make sure that there are no air bubbles. So by doing this, what I did was I actually applied it at a 45-degree angle, and then I allowed the air bubble to actually disappear from underneath. And I'm just holding it down slightly, a little bit longer, only because I am using a base coat, the step 1 resin, versus if I were to use any type of nail glue. So this does take a little bit longer, so you want to allow it time to secure onto the nail. Oops, see? Holding it one more time. Securing it onto the nail. There we go. Now it's secure. So today, I'm actually going to do kind of an almond shape. So to help me out, what I'm actually going to do is I'm using my acrylic nippers, and I'm going to cut the nail across first. If you have a quick tip, you can use a quick tip cutter. Okay. Now I'm going to shorten and bring in the sides. This is going to save me a lot of filing time. If you actually already have a nail tip that is made for, let's say, almond or made for coffin, it'll actually save you significantly a lot more time. All right, here we go. Now, taking my 180 file, because I am working with a plastic nail, and I'm just going to shape her. Working on both sides of the nail, same amount of time, right? So the way we're gonna make sure that it's very symmetrical is by not spending too much time on one side of the nail and not on the other side. So I like to work on the left side and the right side versus working on the left side only and then switching over to the right side. And when you're working with almond, you wanna make sure that you check your client's point of view too. So it might be a little bit hard for me to show you guys because I am working with a top-down camera, but for example, I would look at it from this angle right here so I can make sure that my client's angle, how she sees, I want to make sure that it's also symmetrical from her angle, not just from mine. Kind of make sense? Now I'm going to go back. Okay, now Do we have a question?
Yeah. Darlene, we've got some questions coming in on social. First of all, we've got tons of people saying hello, like Blossom Nail Bar, Sabrina G, Charmed by JLo. But some questions coming in around, what are you doing with this first nail again?
So I'm actually creating an extension with Powder Perfection Clear Color Set, and I'm gonna be showing us how to create an apex at the same time. So it's a little 2-for-1. So now, I'm gonna remove the shine off of my nail tip, and I'm also gonna remove any shine off of my model's nail. This is gonna ensure that I have adhesion. So if there's any shine left for any type of extension, what's gonna happen is that you won't really get the proper adhesion. And I'm also kind of blending in the nail tip, right? I wanna blend in the nail tip so that it's gonna be nice and smooth and seamless. So when we're adding a nail tip, what happens is that we're creating kind of a weak point. So in order to make sure we get rid of that weak point, that's why we need to make an apex. So I'm gonna show that today. Just removing the shine. I'm not using a lot of pressure. I'm kind of just letting the file do the work for me. And today I'm using a 180. Okay, removing the dust.
Is there a recommended length that you would say, or that any guidelines for how long you should go for a tip and overlay with Powder Perfection?
So when it comes to length, it really depends on your client's nail. So looking at Lindsay's natural nail length, she has really long nail beds. So I can actually extend fairly long. Personally, for me, I notice that if let's say they have bitten nails or they have shorter nail beds, it's best to go no more than double the length. If you go more than double the length, it becomes a little bit too heavy, and then you really have to build the apex, and you really have to build the nail, and it tends to look a little too thick, so you don't want it to be too top heavy, right? Mm-hmm. So here,
looks like a good length.
This is a great length for you. So I'm gonna blend it a little bit more right here in the middle.
Hey, Darlene, we got one more question from Lana S. Hamden on Instagram. She wants to know, can you do this with a square-shaped nail as well?
Of course. So her question was, can you do this with a square-shaped nail? Yes, but keep in mind, building an apex for every nail shape is gonna be a little bit different. So when working with an almond, you wanna work at the 1/3 and it goes straight down. And I'll explain a little bit more as I build it. With the square, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna be a little bit wider, right? So you want to make sure that your sides are not narrow. Your sides are also going to be built out. Does that kind of make sense? So taking my base coat once more, I'm actually going to apply right where my nail meets the tip. And I'm going to dip into my clear color set powder. The reason why I didn't run all the way along is because I'm going to build the apex. So the apex is going to be reinforcing the weakest part of the nail. So if I were to run it all the way along, where if I applied my base coat from side to side, yes, I would reinforce the nail, but then it would potentially create a much wider enhancement. So the reason why I just kept it right in the middle is because I want to reinforce it, but at the same time, place my apex starting here. And then now it's going to go up a little bit higher. So removing any excess powder. Taking my base coat once more. Now, if we look at the nail, I'm going to section this off so that we can kind of see what I'm talking about. So this is the full length of the nail. This is about halfway, right? This is about let's say like 1/3 of the way. My goal now is to actually apply my base coat down the middle, but not all the way up to the cuticle line, about 1/3, 2/3, sorry. Remove, tap. And let the powder kind of sit in its soak. What I've noticed before is that we tend to apply the powder and immediately start tapping. We want the base coat to absorb the powder. So that's how it's gonna give you a little bit of that kind of girth, or a little bit more volume, right? So if we tap it off right away, then we're gonna have to apply more and more layers.
And then you have one thick nail.
And then you have, yes,
a lot of
one
filing.
thick nail. Now I will proceed with doing my application as I would normally. I'm going to apply to the full nail, but I'm not going to go all the way up to the cuticle area. And the reason why I'm not going all the way up, it's going to save me a lot of time when I file, because then the cuticle area will already be somewhat tapered. And
A little tiny tip.
yeah. Letting it sit in and absorb slightly, and then bending my client's finger and tapping the excess off. Okay. Now we're getting there. So I kind of want to turn it a little bit so that we can kind of see what we're working with when I talk about the apex. So we can kind of see now that I'm starting to get a little bit of that arch right there, right? Going in one more time. Once again, still not going all the way to the cuticle area. Giving myself a little bit of space. Dipping again. Letting the powder absorb into my base coat. And then tapping off the remainder.
And just like with the colors, are you dipping at a 45-degree angle or
Yes.
straight down?
So if you notice, every time I dip, I actually shake my powder, very similar to when you're working with acrylic powder, right? So that you can get that perfect ball. I want to make sure that there are no grooves when I'm actually putting my client's finger into the jar. The reason why is if it's really, really smooth, it's also going to apply really, really smooth and evenly onto her nail. Versus if there's already some ridges from the prior application, then she'll also get more powder in certain areas than other areas. And continue to check your apex from the side, because it'll tell you whether if you need to do more layers or not. So I'm pretty happy with my application. I'm going to do one more coat. Now this time I'm actually going to go all the way up to the cuticle area, removing that margin. Once again, shaking my powder, dipping at a 45-degree angle, letting the powder sit and absorb before I shake it off. Just going to move this back to the center. And now, removing my excess powder. I'm going to check once
While you're
more.
doing that, we have some questions coming in on social media. First, we've got people saying hello from all over. We've got Esther from Oregon, Cheryl Cook saying hi, Darlene, Regina Rice saying you rock, Darlene. But we've got some questions. First, can you do this look with colored powder?
That is a great question. So, according to OPI protocol, we actually don't want to do this with colored powder. The only reason why is because when we're doing extensions, generally we're going to want to fill it, right? We're not going to just put it on one time and then pop them off. The way the products, resin in particular, the way they actually cross-link when we bring in our activator, which I'm actually going to show now. I'm bringing in my activator. The activator is going to now cure and harden my nail. When we use colored powder, it's very hard to see the lifting. Now, you will say, okay, but when we use acrylic powder, there's colored acrylic powder everywhere, right? Well, the way liquid monomer works when it comes to acrylic is the cross-linking is much tighter. So you're gonna see significantly less lifting. You're gonna see significantly more lifting when working with a dip system such as Powder Perfection. It's just the way the chemistry kind of works. So that's why if you notice our protocol, you apply it once as an overlay and then you remove it, right? So now anytime we're working with, let's say, a service innovation such as doing an extension, we do want to raise certain risk or just flag certain risks, like using colored powder and potential lifting. So if you don't remove all of the lifting of colored powder, they might get greenies, and we want to definitely avoid something like that. That's just my take on it. Now that it's hard, I'm just doing the click, click. And I'm taking my 180 file, and I'm just going to reshape it just slightly. There we go. Working on other side of her nail.
Hey, Darlene, while you're filing, we're getting some questions that are a little bit related. So Rebecca Fowler says that she's not got this yet in the UK, but she's heard it's coming, and it is.
Yes,
So one question that they're getting is about hygiene and dipping clients' fingers into the product, into the jar. And then we've also got another question from Sigourney that says, what should we do with the excess powder in the jar? So they're kind of related.
Got it. So if you notice today, I'm actually working using a little medicine cup you can find online anywhere. And I've used a spoon to actually pour from these large jars and put them in here. So with the excess, what you can do is you can save it for your client next time, or you can dispose of it. So it really depends on, let's say, your region. So if you have state board, let's say, they do want you to remove and discard any of the excess powder, just because your client's hands, there's oils that comes from the finger, from your finger. We don't want any cross-contamination. But if you do want to save some of the powder, you can save this for your client, but just only use it for your client. I wouldn't use it on anyone else. Hope that helps. So now shaping, continuing my shaping. Now, when shaping the apex, you want to make sure that you don't touch the center of the nail. You want to make sure that you are focusing more so on the sidewalls, and then beveling in the sidewalls into the center of the nail. So if you notice the way I'm holding my file, actually, I'm holding my file, I'm starting on the left-hand side, and then I'm bringing it inward to the center of the nail. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side and bring it opposite direction inward as well. Go around the cuticle area. And remember, when we were applying around the cuticle area, we actually left a tiny little margin up until the very end. And the reason is so that this very part right here, where we don't have to spend a lot of time trying to make sure that the cuticle area is not super thick. We don't want a thick or fat or bulky enhancement. Never looks cute. Even though I will say the trend is coming in. Lindsay and I were talking about that earlier,
Thick,
right?
bulky nails, right?
We're starting to
Square
see
shape.
that. They're coming in style again. Very 90s.
Trends evolve.
They do. It always comes back around.
Some trends I could do without.
One I will say I do like is the necklaces right now, the little choker guys. I was really into that, the little
down with those,
tattoo chokers. Those are cool.
Also, French made a revival.
Yes, and we're going to do French neck, so
Perfect.
we're going to be on trend, Lindsay.
Oh my gosh, it's like you knew.
It's like I knew. So now I'm going to check from the side, and you're going to see that I have a little bit of a little thickness right here, right? What I'm going to do now is I'm going to look from the side angle and then contour the nail so it's nice and smooth. Same thing, focusing on the left side and the right side.
Hey, Darlene, I noticed that you're hand filing this.
Yes.
Is it possible to save some time and maybe use an e-file?
Definitely. You can definitely e-file. I'm using a hand file today just so that I can really focus around the cuticle area on Lindsay because we just prepped her right before this. But yes, you can definitely save time and use a e-file. If you are going to use the e-file, just make sure that you're using a bit that is compatible with OPI products. All products have a different hardness. So when you're using Powder Perfection, what we actually recommend is to use either using a mandrel with a sanding band, or you can use a carbide fine or medium bit, grit-wise. Okay, checking again, side of my nail. You're gonna see right here is where majority of my product is, and then it goes straight down.
Very nice.
Okay, I'm just gonna refine it just a hair.
So what would happen if you didn't build out a good apex and you're doing a tip and overlay?
That is a great question. So let's say I have a really flat nail on my client. What will actually happen is that she's gonna be more prone to breaking, and she's gonna actually break right here. So right here is her weakest point, and that's why I'm reinforcing the weakest point, because this is we're already using a tip, right? We're not sculpting it out. So if we're using a tip, you're already introducing a weak point right where the tip meets the natural nail. So we wanna reinforce it by creating that apex. So now I'm finally happy with my shape. Finally. Took me a little while to...
You are a professional.
I am. Then I'm going to take my activator once more. I'm applying the activator now because my activator is actually going to give me my shine. So I'm going to apply my step 3 in a second. But if you don't want to keep it clear, and you do want to actually overlay this with, let's say, gel color, nail lacquer, infinite shine, you can. What you would do is skip that activator step that I just did. You would stop right there and then buff. Make sure that you apply the proper base coat. So if you're using nail lacquer, use a nail lacquer base coat. If you're using gel color, use a gel color base coat. Sometimes we'll skip that step for timing, but what actually ends up happening is they're gonna get a lot of tip lifting or side lifting because the product needs a little bit of grit, but also it needs the adhesion that you're gonna get from a base coat. So there you have it. Here's my finished nail. So I'm showing you the apex this way. Maybe it'd be better. Oh, there it is. Be better so you could see it that way. So if you notice right here, it's very flush with her cuticle area. So I'm using this stick, but let's say if I were to even use my pusher, it's not gonna pull. Nothing's gonna tug. It's gonna be nice and smooth. Then right here, where majority of my product lays at the top 1/3, and then going straight down.
No flat nail here.
No flat nail here. Great. Any more questions from our live before I move on to the next look?
Yeah, we have, most people are saying that they love it.
Yay!
Tran Min Trang says that she loves the shape, but Christy is just wanting you to confirm what the shape is of that nail.
Oh, so I just did an almond today. Almond's my favorite. So the reason why it's almond actually looks like an almond that you would eat. So it's slightly tapered at the bottom, but a little bit rounded. So biggest difference to, let's say, an almond or let's say a baby claw or even a stiletto is that it's gonna be a lot sharper. I'm kind of rounding it out so that, you know, Lindsay's not really a lady of leisure. She's a little rougher on her hands.
Yeah.
So rounded it out for her so she's not too sharp. Great.
Looks great.
Now we're gonna move to our next look. So, our next look, going into traditional pink and white, since we were just talking about how trendy those are, I'm gonna show today how to do a reverse French. But to keep it really, really fun and cool, I'm gonna show you how to do it with a chevron.
Ooh, fun.
So it's gonna be a nice little V. Here I have washi tape. I love using washi tape. Because it's really easy to remove, but it also, there's like kind of like a wax layer almost, and that wax layer prevents any of the base coat or the activator to kind of going through. So let me find, it's always so hard to find where you left off.
Like a roll of tape.
Yeah. All right. So.
That's what's cool about French coming back. It's come back in a more evolved, modern way.
Yes.
So it's like you don't have to have the straight line necessarily. You can do different shapes.
I love it.
Me too.
Darlene, while you're working on the tape,
course.
Rebecca Fowler is asking what the main benefits are to powder perfection versus acrylic.
Okay, so if you're doing acrylic versus powder perfection, it really depends on, let's say, also your client, your skill level. So when I say skill level, powder perfection is going to be a little bit easier to pick up versus doing acrylics, but acrylics will last a little bit longer. Acrylics also can do a lot of the same things that powder perfection can, and powder perfection can do a lot of the same things. Biggest difference is sculpting. So sculpting meaning using a nail form underneath. Powder perfection you cannot sculpt because the liquids come in bottle form versus when you're doing acrylic, it's gonna come in a bottle and then you can then pour it into a Dappen dish and then use that. So biggest difference mainly is being able to sculpt. But for the client though, if they do want, let's say, something with color that's going to be really, really quick, powder perfection would be definitely the system to go for because it's already built in. So with acrylic, usually it's going to be clear. So for us, OPI, we have absolute powder. That would require you to then put some sort of color system on top. Whereas here, it's already built in. So you kind of get to skip that step, which is kind of nice.
Wouldn't you say, too, it's also really great for that customer that's maybe tried gel and it didn't work for them? Maybe their nails were too weak or too brittle. And so dipping powders gives them that bit of extra strength to protect their nails while still having like a beautiful manicure.
Definitely. So both of the systems are going to give you that extra strength. So if they've tried gel before or if they've tried lacquer and they notice they're chipping or they're like Lindsay and they're really, really hard on their hands, this is the perfect system. So I've actually already prepped her nails and now I'm applying my washi tape into a V formation. The reason why I'm doing this is I want to block off the bottom because I'm actually going to only focus on the body of the nail. And I'm going to use pink today. I'm actually using Bubble Bath. So taking my base coat, I'm going to apply not all the way to the cuticle area because, like I did earlier, I want to save that for last. And now I'm just going to pour over. And I'm pouring over because I can't really dip at an angle when I have the tapes on. So keep in mind, this is also more for nail art usage. It's more for the design. You will always get actually more density when you're dipping. So keep that in mind that it can potentially affect the wear slightly, but most likely not really. But it is possible. Now removing the excess. And you do have to work quickly because I am going to remove that tape and I don't want to take too long when applying my powder because then it'll actually be too hard and it's going to be hard to remove the powder. Remove the tape, I mean, sorry.
What color are you using?
I'm using Bubble Bath.
Oh.
Bubble Bath
Fave.
in Powder Perfection, it goes best pink and white.
So pretty.
Removing the excess. Okay. Now, one more layer.
While you're doing that extra layer, we got a question regarding the extended nail. Can you use a form to extend with dipping powders?
Unfortunately, no. So the reason why you can't use a form when you're extending is because you do need the foundation to already be there because we don't have the liquid that we would normally have when we're doing, let's say, liquid and monomer. So we can't get the powder to get to that slurry that we want in order for it to form onto the nail form. So we actually have to apply the tip previously. Now I'm going to gently remove, after I dust off my excess, I'm going to quickly and gently remove my tape. And you'll see it's coming off nicely. Great. All right, and then I'm going to take this nice little silicone. It's like a chrome applicator, and it's still soft like putty. So the reason why I'm doing this is I'm going to get that nice V. And the silicone works really, really well with Powder Perfection because it doesn't stick. You can use a dexterity. You can also use a cuticle stick if you want, but I'm going to use this today and just letting it. Perfect. Really happy with how it looks. So we kind of see where the V's coming in, right? Okay, so now I'm going to use my activator because I do want to harden it to the point that I can kind of file it. And I'm just going to apply the activator onto the pink portion. I don't want to get activator on the natural nail because once I go in to apply my base one and I apply the white there, what's going to happen is that it potentially can harden it and kind of give it like that top coat finish. That's not what I'm going for. I'm going for adhesion. So this, I'm focusing my activator only on the pink portion. And it takes about 1 to 2 minutes to harden. The international version. Let's see. Now, feels hard. I'm going to take my file once more just to perfect the point.
Hey, Darlene, what brand of tape are you using, or kind of tape?
Yeah, so the tape I'm using is just washi tape that I actually found at like basic craft store. It's just called washi tape. I think you can use a lot of this for making, what are those notebook? Scrapbooking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll find in the scrapbooking section of most arts and crafts supplies.
There we go.
Is that the width that you prefer as far as the washi tape, or does it?
There's tons of widths when it comes to washi tape. I just picked this one just because it covered your nail tip, but they have thicker ones, they have thinner ones. It really depends on preference, but you don't want to go too thin because once you try to cover it with your base coat, it could potentially flood over if it's too thin. So you do want it on the thicker width. That's a great question though. Now removing my excess powder. So you can really see the V coming together now, right? Yeah.
Cool.
So now I'm going to take my base coat once more, and I'm going to take my white now. I'm going to apply on your natural nail.
Have you ever confused your white powder with
Definitely.
clear
So
color set?
I actually did that teaching once, and now I use a permanent marker, and underneath it, I'll actually label it white or clear so that doesn't happen because they look so similar.
Yeah. That's clever. Label your jars.
Label your jars, yes. Don't do what I did.
So we got a quick question for you around the activator step on the pink.
Yes.
Did you apply the activator just on top or on the ledge too?
Only on top, only to the pink areas. I did not apply any activator onto her natural nail because I still want my base coat to give that adhesion. I don't want it to interact and actually give it that top coat look or a glossy finish. Great question. So dipping once more, letting it absorb.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yay, it's coming together.
It's like a perfect look for Valentine's Day, which is coming up.
Yes, Valentine's Day is coming up. I can't believe it. It's going by so fast.
I know. 2020. It already feels like a month in.
I know. January kicks my butt every year. Now, it's okay if it's not too perfect because we are going to contour this. And this would actually be the perfect time to use an e-file for this look. Letting it absorb. Then removing the excess. I'm going to turn again to the side so you can kind of see. So the white's a little bit higher than the pink, and that's okay. That's what I mean by it's okay if it is not leveled, because we are going to contour it and we're going to remove a lot of that excess. Removing excess powder. Now taking my activator once more and just applying it to the white. Letting it harden for about 1 to 2 minutes. Then I will use my 180 file just to tap and see how hard it's gotten. Still getting there. It is a little bit on the thicker side, so it's going to take a little bit, but you can already.
Do it with other colors, like aside from pink? Or
yes,
like
you can
pink and red,
definitely do other colors. One combo that I've seen that's been really popular lately is to use a nude on the inside and then use a really fun color on the outside. So Samoan Sand is also a really good nude on the inside, or even Pale to the Chief. That one's a really good nude too. Put it in neutral. Those all work really well. And then you can do any fun color on the outside, like Short Story or Malaga Wine, or even if you wanted to go black and do like black onyx just to kind of do a twist on your French tip, it'd be a little more of a modern French. You can do that too. I'm just doing, sorry, go ahead.
I said, or you just keep it classic.
Yes.
So it's good.
Yeah, so I went with pink and white today only because I really wanted to show the techniques and focus more so on that. So now that this is nice and hard, I'm going to contour. When I file my side, I'm just going to go up against, flush against her nail, and filing straight down and across. And once again, same thing. You can still create an apex by the way you file. So working on the left side, filing inward using kind of a curved C curve. Same thing on the other side.
Darlene, could you use the same technique for a different smile line?
Can I use? Yes, you can definitely use the same technique for a different smile line. Or you can even do it more for, let's say, art. So if you wanted to do more of like a zigzag, or you wanted to do more using stenciling, you can definitely do that. It'd be very similar to how I'm doing it right now.
Just depends on the washi tape design?
Yes, just depends on the washi tape design.
Tape the washi tape?
Yeah, exactly. How you tape the washi tape. We actually have some cool tutorials that will come out pretty soon, so wink, wink. Those are going to come out. It's actually going to showcase how to do a full chevron, so keep a lookout for that.
Where's they look? On YouTube?
Yes, those will be available on YouTube. It'll also be available on our website, so YouTube, or even on our Instagram. They'll be available shortly. We're not quite done with them yet, but. Okay, checking again from a side angle. It's a little bit thick right here, so I'm gonna bring that down. I don't want it to be too thick, especially around the cuticle area, so always check from the side. we pay a lot of attention of how it looks from the top down, and we kind of forget how it looks on the side. But the side is actually the structure that it's actually super important, because that's how we know how it's gonna wear.
Mm-hmm. No flat nail here.
No flat nail here.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. So
so
I'm
good.
pretty happy with this.
I love it. It's so cute.
Checking again from my client's point of view, which is kind of straight. See, when we actually check from the client's point of view, we can see that it like went a little upward on the left-hand side. Okay. Flipping around. Removing my excess powder. Now applying my activator once more. Being really generous with the activator.
Darlene, while that's drying, we've got some comments coming in. So first, Dawn Daniel is saying that this is very calming to watch. So I'm really happy we're calming you. And then we've got a few new people watching the live. So we just want to go over again. Filing, do you have to hand file? Can you use an e-file? And if you hand file, what number file should you use?
Yes, so great question. So today I am hand filing, but no, you can use an e-file. If you are going to use an e-file, make sure that you're using the correct bits. So you have two options. Your first option is using a mandrel with sand band. Second option is using a carbide, whether it's soft, medium, or, why am I spacing? I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
Medium or medium grit, or you can use a fine grit. But if you do want to do it by hand, I am using a 180 today. I'm using a 180 today because I am doing an enhancement, but also if you're doing powder perfection and you're not over applying, then you can always do it by hand, because you're not going to have to remove too much product. When you're using an e-file, it's going to help you remove the product a lot quicker, shape a lot quicker. So in a salon setting for sure. Today also, because I am on the live, I didn't want the e-file to kind of go on and disrupt you guys.
Gets kind of loud in the microphone.
It does. So I've waited the proper time. Now I'm going to use my top coat. And the key to top coating, A, is to apply with a flat brush using 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 quick strokes, and not over applying. If we overwork the product, what's going to happen is that it's going to interfere with our activator interacting with our top coat to give us that shine. So here I use probably about 3 quick strokes, but then also you can kind of see how it dries very similar to lacquer, right? So you can see it was really, really glossy, and now I'm kind of losing that gloss, and now I'm starting to see it's starting to dry. Once I notice that this evenly has kind of gotten rid of the shine slightly all over, then I can go ahead and apply my second coat. And that's where the second coat is really gonna give me that high shine finish. If I don't, and let's say I do apply when there are certain spots that are still a little bit shiny, that's where I'm gonna get matte spots. But if you do get a matte spot, we have a really cool pro tip. You can take a shiner buffer and actually buff out that matte spot. So, quick pro tip. Actually, I should have brought a buffer so I could show that today, actually. Yeah. But now you guys know you can always use a buffer.
Yeah.
A shiner buffer, to be specific. Okay.
I love that they said it's relaxing to watch.
Yay.
You're like the Bob Ross of nails.
The first time Lindsay showed me that, I'm like, who is
Like,
Bob
you're too young
Ross?
to remember Bob Ross.
Now I'm gonna just let it dry. And like you notice, I only used 3 brush strokes. I applied not too much, but also not too little where it's gonna streak. And now you can really see my shine start to show through.
Very nice.
Yay.
Hey, Darlene, did you cap the free edge with that top coat?
I didn't cap the free edge with the top coat because I didn't want to create a ledge. But when I did apply my activator, I did cap the free edge because I want to make sure that it cures not only on top, but I wanted to make sure that it was going to cure through because it is on the thicker side. If I actually show how thick it is, you can kind of see right here. So that's why I did cap the free edge when I applied the activator, but not when I did my top coat. Sometimes, yeah, I can create that little ledge, and I was trying to avoid that ledge. Now, I already have this pre-applied for us, but I wanted to kind of talk through the techniques in order to get a French that is straight and all the way through. So a few things that are really important when you're doing a straight, thin French is, one, making sure that the nail shape is the correct nail shape. So if you're gonna do a straight French, they have to be in either, let's say, a coffin shape, or they need to definitely be in a square shape. So if my client were to be, let's say, in a round shape, when we go and apply the straight French across, it's gonna look really funny because that's when you really need the curve. So it really depends on the shape of the nail. Now, so for Lindsay's nail, what I had already done was I made sure that she was in a square shape before I did the French. Have you guys seen that really popular heart design that's on the tip of the nail? If you actually try to do that heart design on the tip of the nail, let's say on a square nail, it throws it all off and it kind of looks like this weird butt thing, right? So that's very similar to this, where you got to make sure that you already have the correct shape in order for the actual French tip to look proper. Also, keeping it thin, it's important to keep the nails on the shorter end. So keeping the nails shorter is going to make sure that, let's say, where the free edge and the body of the nail, right, or where the body of the nail. If it's too long, let's say I'm using something like this, and let's imagine that this was square, right? If I were to do short and thin at the very, very tip over here, you're gonna see that there's too much pink area and not enough of the white. So it really is important too, kind of where she finishes or where her natural nail bed kind of ends. So keeping it on the shorter end like we did here is really important for a straight French. Also, now applying it. You don't want to use, let's say, one of those little cups. So these trays right here, so you'll see a lot of these trays, they're available anywhere, but we have them, I think, in one of our kits. I've seen them in our liquid kits. These trays are made so that you can get that perfect smile line. It's not made to go straight across. So what I like to do actually is, using my powder in my cup, I can then tip forward my product. And then when I apply, I create the straight across like that. Does that kind of make sense to everybody? I hope I'm explaining this properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you're saying that with the tray, you get too much of a curve, but
yes, so
going into your little cup,
yeah,
a straighter line.
Exactly, Lindsay. So with the tray, it's intended for you to get that curve, so it's a little bit harder. But if you control the client's finger, then you can control the angle. But using it in a little medicine cup, I can then bring the product up and control it better to get the French to go straight across. So here we have it. We have our extension with our apex. We have how to do a chevron French using our washi tape. And last but not least, little tips and tricks on how to really get that straight, thin French.
Looks good.
Any other questions coming in, Megan?
We've gotten a lot of excitement around the Shine Buffer Pro Tip. Not a lot of people knew that, so there was some excitement there. Rebecca Fowler is saying that this is a really great video. Thank you for doing it. Lots of love and heart eyes right now.
Yay!
Aw, hard eyes. Yay.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. Look, and now it's all nice and shiny. So I'm just gonna finish off with a little bit of cuticle oil because all that prep work on Lindsay and all that filing dust.
I love the technique with the washi tape because even stuff like that, like just using washi tape, will get clients excited. Like, ooh, what are you doing? Like, oh, nobody else does this for me when they're doing a French.
And washi tape is also super, super cheap, and you can find it at any craft store.
Yeah.
Now she's nice and nourished. You do want to make sure that you wait the proper time for your top coat to be fully dry before applying the cuticle oil, only because you don't want to interfere with your shiny top coat. We don't want to take away from that. Here we have our finished looks.
Very nice.
We'll hide that finger.
Yeah.
Like that.
There, just
There
show
we
the pretty
go.
ones.
Show just the pretty ones.
Very cool.
And once again,
Those are so
I'm
fun.
using clear color set powder for my first finger. And for the other ones, I have actually used Bubble Bath and Alpine Snow. I don't think I clarified what white I use, so it is Alpine Snow.
Yeah.
Keeping it classic today.
Mm-hmm. Classy but modern.
We're getting one more question around how long should you wait for the top coat to completely dry? And then how many coats of the straight French did you do? I'm not sure if they're referring to the Alpine Snow maybe.
Yes, so first question was how many coats did I use to do this finger? So her finger is on the shorter end, so I actually only did 2 coats each. So I did 2 coats of the pink and then 2 coats of the white.
I think they asked also how long to wait for the top coat
Yes,
to dry.
thank you. And how long to wait for the top coat to dry? It's about 1 to 2 minutes per top coat. So first coat of top coat, you want to wait about 1 to 2 minutes. Sometimes it could be longer, right? If you're a little bit heavy-handed on your application, if it's a little bit thicker. The key is to make sure that you see that it's no longer shiny and it's dried up in all areas before you apply your second coat. Usually it's about 2 minutes. And then 1 to 2 minutes once more before you apply your cuticle oil.
And then what top coat did you use?
Yes. So I actually used our Powder Perfection Step 3 top coat. And definitely keep your top coat nice and clean also. If we don't clean the neck of the bottles, it's really hard to open sometimes. So after each client, I like to just take a nail wipe and kind of clean off the excess. And then tighten it back on. Not too tight, because it's still a resin, right? So you put it on too tight, it's gonna be harder to open next time. But fun pro tip, if you get a latex or let's say a nitrile glove and you use the glove, it gives you a nice grip so you can open it.
We're getting some more questions for you about your top coat. Talia says her top coat always gums up. Any tips?
Yes, so gumming up is actually from the interaction with the oxygen that's in the air. So it's really, really important to make sure that you cover it, keep it in a dark, cool area, so in a drawer. Don't really put these on display only for that reason. It can get a little gummy. And then also making sure that when you remove your excess dust, you have a brush and you go around the cuticle area, because sometimes you can get a little bit of the powder in there, and then when we go to apply our top coat, it'll pick up onto the brush and then it'll go into the bottle. And then there is peroxide in our powder, so it'll interact with our resin and then it'll actually get gummy and hard inside the bottle, and we don't even really know it because the particles were so tiny. So make sure you use a really good brush and you get rid of that excess before you apply your top coat. Make sure you store your top coat in the right places. Keep it nice and dark and nice and cool.
Okay, we're getting flooded with questions right now, so I'm going to try to answer some of them as best I can.
Here it comes.
So where can we buy this product if we're not professionals? Unfortunately, this is a professional-only product, so this would be something that you would need to ask your salon to provide for you, but do make sure that you're asking for the OPI dipping powder. The product name is Powder Perfection, to get this sort of a look. Then the next question was this technique. Could you also do this in a French ombre? Yes, absolutely you can. We've got these videos available for you on our YouTube channel or on our website. And then finally, I'd love it, Darlene, if you could just go over one more time how to, we're getting lots of questions around infections and dipping powders and hygiene. So we reviewed this a couple of times in the live already, but let's just close out with this one more time.
Yes, okay, so to keep it really, really clean and really, really sanitary, you want to make sure that you are taking the product out of the jar and placing them either into these little medicine cups that you can get anywhere, super, super easy, and using the excess for the client only, let's say her next time that she comes in for her next appointment, or discarding it completely. So you want to stay compliant with not only state board, but also because there are oils, there are from my hands, also from my client's hands, you don't want to reuse these powders.
I'm just going to reinforce that one more time. So if you're a customer going in to get your nails done at a salon, please ask that they do not reuse the product or dip your nail into the pot. That is where infections can come from. But if you're following OPI protocol, which is to have single-use powders for your customer, there should be no infection.
Yep. Or you can save the powder for that client, right? So if you're using the powder with that client, like you can then save it, write their name on it, make sure you cover the top so that no excess debris comes in for their next time that they're serviced. And then you can use those powders on her again. So it's gonna be like her own powders. So thank you for joining us today, Darlene and Lindsay with OPI Education. Thanks for watching our Powder Perfection how-tos. Bye.
Bye.